I absolutely love God of War. I have hundreds of dollars worth of collectibles for this game. It is probably my favorite, actually, not probably, it literally is my favorite piece of fiction. It all started with the God of War 1 and 2 collection for PlayStation 3, which I rented with my dad from Blockbuster. But as far as my mom knew, we actually got Lego Rock Band. Wink, wink. Which then, after that, I went to Best Buy for the God of War 3 release, and then the guy at Best Buy told my mom that it was inappropriate and I should get Uncharted 2, and to this day, I literally want to kill that guy. Why? Who does that? Like, why? With all of that said, I adore this game, I am obsessed with this game, I am a God of War connoisseur, and I will now rank every single God of War, except Betrayal. In God of War 1, I think the story, even to today's standards, is amazing. I think the story in God of War 1 is better than 99% of stories in most games today. I think the game is still relevant to the series. There's a lot of callbacks and mentions of Ares and stuff like that in God of War 4 and Ragnarok and all that stuff. Not as much God of War 4, but more Ragnarok. And this is where it all started. So, I mean, I think the rating is straightforward. There's not really many cons. Other than I think the other games just kind of overshadow it sometimes, which is not a bad thing. As the game series goes on, it honestly just keeps getting better and better. But other than that, I really don't think there's much bad to say. Not to mention the phone number Easter egg that nobody knows about.
Consider yourself privileged, mortal. You have seen the true fate of my enemy. Now go! Our time together is at an end. We will meet again, mortal. I will see you again.
But anyway, I'm going to give this game rating a Titan. I just think this is where I don't think it gets any lower or any higher than Titan. God of War 2 is to many people the best God of War game of all time, at least from what I've seen. I think the gameplay is amazing, the story is amazing, maybe the best story in the whole Greek saga in my opinion, and the cinematics were perfect. I loved the cinematics in this game, they were awesome. And then like the plot twist with Zeus and everything at the end, just like the first one, there's like literally nothing bad I could say about it. I think it's literally one of the most iconic games to this day. I think it was one of the best PlayStation 2 games and one of the best God of War games, no doubt. The whole Zeus being Kratos' dad plot twist is still one of my favorite parts of the whole series, one of my favorite scenes.
A fear that drove Zeus to kill you. His own son.
His son?
When it comes to one-year-old Dante, Pierre, you are the father.
All kidding aside, I think ranking this game is honestly kind of hard because it's a sensitive topic. It's many people's favorite God of War game, which I could totally see why, but I think I'm going to place this one in Titan. Which might be a bit controversial, but I think it just does everything God of War 1 does, but just so much better. And so, like, you're probably thinking, okay, like, why would God of War 1 and 2 be in the same tier? But I just think because God of War 2 does not quite reach the games that are going to be in God tier. So God of War Chains of Olympus is definitely one of the more nostalgic games in the series for me. I remember taking this case everywhere. I brought it in my book bag. I was showing all my friends on the school bus. I was playing this game on the school bus on my PSP. But in hindsight, I think the game is really, really good. There's honestly really nothing bad to say about most God of Wars. And this is just one of them. I really don't have anything bad to say about it. I think the gameplay for PSP was really, really fun. Again, in hindsight, I've actually emulated this game recently, and it's still just, it ages so well. I think the hack and slash Greek God of War style just never gets old. And on the PSP, I think they perfected it on the PSP. I think story-wise, the peak of this game is really getting more insight on his daughter. There isn't really too much going on in the story. Like, you get to see his daughter again, and then in order to save his daughter, he needs to push her away. and not see her again. People who say the Greek era was not deep have no idea what they're talking about. These games were seriously, seriously deep. And this is just a prime example of them. And this isn't even the best example. It might be one of the better examples of the Greek era, but all right, I'm talking too much about it. But anyway, I think this game right here, again, not too much to say about it, but I'm going to rate this game mortal. These ratings aren't based off of how these games actually scale against other games. I'm just comparing each God of War to each other. And I think in the series, Chains of Olympus, it's not crazy, but if you're a real big fan, then you'll really appreciate it. So that's why I'm just going to throw it in mortal. Man, God of War 3. So this one obviously is like a fan favorite. I think this game is just so iconic in gaming history. Like, I think all games hold their place in gaming history, but when people talk about God of War, I think a lot of people think of God of War 3 and just like the epic boss battles. I mean, you literally ripped Helios' head off with your bare hand. It was insane. And this game was insane. Not to mention, it literally started straight from where God of War 2 left off. The pacing, each level was based off of killing an individual god. It was just perfect. I literally think this game could not be any more perfect. I think it was so good. There's a big debate between God of War 3 and God of War 2. If you think God of War 2 is better, I really wouldn't argue with you. I could see why you think that, but I just fall into the God of War 3 category. I just think God of War 3 is so good. It even dives into Kratos' humanity again with Pandora, the power of hope. It's so epic. And the graphics on the PS3, the graphics look like they could be on a PS4. I mean, even like maybe a PS5. Like, the graphics were insane. Now, I just don't think God of War 2 quite reaches the greatness of God of War 3. And that is why I can't put God of War 2 and 3 in the same tier. I think God of War 2 is so close to God tier. Like, I think it's just about there. I just cannot put God of War 3 in the same tier as God of War 2. I just think God of War 3 is just so iconic. So I've pretty much insinuated it already, but obviously I'm putting God of War 3 in God tier. I think you could put God of War 2 and God of War 3 in God tier, or I think you could flip them. But in my opinion, man, I keep defending myself because I think putting God of War 2 in Titan tier is a little controversial. But in my opinion, man, God of War 2 and God of War 3, I think should be separated. I think God of War 3 kind of just separates itself from the first two games in the mainline Greek run. So God of War Ghost of Sparta, I think this game is really, really good. I think it's the best prequel in the series. Since there's been a couple prequels, I think this one definitely is the one that stands out. It just has a really, really good story. I think, honestly, in the Greek saga, this game also, the story in this game stands out kind of like it stands out in God of War 2. It really gives a lot of like insight on Kratos' childhood. His mom is in it, and he has to kill his mom. Then his mom tells him his brother Deimos is still alive, which Deimos then gets mentioned like a decade later in God of War Ragnarok. Like, the good thing about this series is in the reboots, the soft reboots, they didn't abandon all this stuff, so it's all still relevant. So Ghost of Sparta was definitely a good game. It has very similar to Chains of Olympus. It has fun gameplay on the handheld as well. There's really nothing bad to say about this. I think this game is better than Chains of Olympus, so I'm gonna rate it in Spartan. I think it just deserves to be definitely rated higher than Chains of Olympus. However, I just think God of War 1 and 2 should probably be ranked a little bit higher. I think it's very, very close. Maybe, I don't know. I can't put this game with God of War 1 and 2, so I think it's definitely better than Chains of Olympus. I don't think it's quite as good as God of War 1 and 2. But just because of the story elements and everything, I'm throwing it in Spartan. Alright, so moving on to God of War Ascension. I think this one's pretty interesting. I think this game aged better than it released. I think it was a bit overhated when it first came out just because it had to follow up from God of War 3. I think it was a really weird time to release a prequel looking back at it. I really don't know why. I don't know who came up with this game, but I don't know. It was just very random. I remember when it got announced, and then when I found out it was a prequel, I mean, I was pretty young at the time, but I was old enough to know, like, why is it a prequel? Like, why isn't it adding to the story? Or why isn't it a sequel to God of War 3? So I think it was like a weird time to release a prequel. I think it was the worst time to release a prequel right after God of War 3. I don't know. I don't think it offered that much to the story. I guess really what the story showed was, again, like I keep mentioning, Kratos' humanity. I think he felt sorry for killing Orcos. I think this was before he really started to lose himself. I think the boss fights were really cool. The Kraken final boss was really cool. I mean, there isn't really much to say about it. I do think this is probably the worst game in the series, but I'm still not going to rank it death. I think it's very fair to just put it in mortal, because I don't think it was bad. I just think the timing was bad. I don't know. I really don't think it's bad. I'm gonna throw it in mortal. I think mortal is a safe place to put it. It's definitely not Spartan, but it's definitely not death. I don't really think any God of War is that bad where it's like, oh my god, it's so much worse than all the other ones. I think it's a good game. I think it has a good story. It just doesn't really offer much, and then it also was just a weird time to release it. God of War 4. This game is
perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
I mean, it is literally this game is amazing. The story, the gameplay, the build up, the announcement. I mean, that E3 announcement, in my opinion, is it's the greatest E3 announcement of all time. I mean, who was expecting this? I mean, it was great, man. And then the plot twist, the boss fights, the visuals, the axe, like I remember watching the trailer and seeing how you could catch the axe like Thor, and I don't know, man. It was just, they did everything perfectly. Every single decision they made, it was just so carefully made, and it was so perfect, and it wound up becoming a masterpiece. This game is without a doubt a masterpiece. I mean, it just doesn't come much better than this. The game speaks for itself. It's obviously getting thrown in God's ear. There's really not much to say about it other than that. The game just absolutely speaks for itself. So God of War Ragnarok is an interesting one to talk about. I think that it's the most controversial in the series. I think it's the biggest game in the series, both popularity-wise and also content-wise. So with more content and more people, I think comes more things to love, more criticism, and then obviously just more feedback, more opinions. So just some common criticism I've seen is the pacing, the story, and then the writing can be really corny. I think all of those things have some truth to it. I think the writing could be a bit corny, like how Freya's brother sacrificed himself. It was kind of like a Hollywood way to go out. And then Ratatoskr, I think he's fine, but I see some criticism with him as well, saying that he's like a Disney character, right? But overall, I think the majority of people think the game is really good. Solid story, obviously flawless gameplay like 2018, and then flawless visuals like 2018, with an even bigger map and open world. As for my opinion, I think the story is amazing. I just don't think the pacing does it justice. I think if the pacing was better, the story would flow better. I think the game has really high highs, and then it has really low lows. And like lows as in, it just gets boring.
When you said you knew...
Some of the best boss fights in this series are in this game. I'll never forget that first Thor boss fight, man. I was hyped, bro. And then I think the character development's really amazing. I really love where Kratos is going. I like where Atreus is going and how they split up. I'm actually, unpopular opinion, hoping for an Atreus spinoff, just to lead us into like a grand God of War, kind of like Spider-Man 2, Miles Morales style. And then I think the end of the game really sets up a lot for the future, like different pantheons and stuff like that. And I think everybody's excited for that. I think it is rushed. I think Ironwood could have been cut in half, and like literally half of that could have went into Ragnarok. And I do think a couple other side, like like fetch quests could have been sped up, and then a lot of that could have been put into the actual event of Ragnarok. And then I think there's just too many plot lines. Like I think Kratos, Atreus, Freya and her brother, Brock and Sindri, it all in the end went very well, and I think it all came together very well, and I really don't have much to complain about it. But I just do think that this game would have been better off with like a God of War 2018, God of War Fimbulwinter, and then a God of War Ragnarok, so that they can like space all of these things out. I think God of War Ragnarok went against the basic God of War formula, which is simple story, complex characters per the literal director, Cory Barlog. I think the story in this was very complex, and then I think the characters were very complex, and it was just a lot. I think like God of War 2018, for example, is literally just the point of the story is to just bring the wife's ashes to the highest point in all the realms. But you had really complex characters like Kratos and like Atreus and even Mimir, where those complex characters just made the story in a whole feel so complex. But anyway, I'm just going to rate this game. I think this game has some of the highest highs in the series, but then I do unfortunately think it has some of the lowest lows in the series. But I don't think it deserves anything lower than Titan. I think if you put this in God, I would accept that, but I'm just going to throw it in Titan because I just don't think it's quite as good as 2018 and stuff like that. Last, but certainly not least, God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. This game, or this DLC, will forever hold a special place in my heart, just like God of War 4. I mean, this was just an absolute gift. It was free. They could have easily sold this for like $30. It was nostalgic. The storytelling was amazing. It was a fun spin on the gameplay with the roguelike. And it was just a present to the fans, especially to the OG fans, which is why Sony Santa Monica Studios will just always stand out to me. Like, they just clearly care about their fan base. It's some of the most fun I've ever had in the whole series. Like, this DLC for me really redeemed God of War Ragnarok. Not that it even needed to be redeemed, so to say, because I still really liked the game. Valhalla really just it was amazing. I mean, just seeing Helios, seeing the old Kratos, the old character model remastered. I mean, it is amazing. Of course, there's still some recency bias, but I really think this DLC will go down in history for sure. Seeing Helios again and hearing what's going through Kratos' head after the events of God of War 3, and then fighting Tyr and using the blade of Olympus, and then not to mention, again, seeing the old character model remastered in the new games. I mean, I remember seeing the announcement being super hype, but then just thinking like, okay, it's probably just a roguelike game mode. Let me keep my expectations low.
Well, what's your father always saying in this situation?
Keep your expectations low, and you'll never be disappointed.
Wise words.
But yeah, it just exceeded my expectations. It was amazing. I'm going to go right into ranking this game, and I'm putting this one in God tier, man. I mean, recency bias is still fresh. I mean, it's been out for a pretty decent amount of time, but I don't know, man. I think this DLC is going down in history, in my opinion. It was just amazing. But that is every single game in God of War. This video took a minute to make. I grinded this one out, but it was really fun. So thank you. Peace.